It's FoosTalk Live.
You talking to me?
Compelling and lively banter.
Are you going to talk to us?
Talking foosball.
Foosball was how I measured my value as a man. You took that away.
Players and fans, promoters and pros. Unedited and raw.
Talk.
Living in the moment.
We have a lot of important things to talk about.
All while practicing social distancing.
Cool. We'll talk. No big whoop.
Let's get this thing started. FoosTalk Live. Coming to you live from the studios of Foosball Radio and Inside Foos TV, it's the 46th episode of FoosTalk Live, brought to you in part by 518 Prints, one of the finest printers of promotional items, t-shirts, jackets, hoodies, and foosball apparel. Visit 518prints.com today. Also brought to you in part by Foosballers The Movie. Download your copy of this Joe Hesslinger documentary at foosballersthemovie.com. FoosTalk Live, also brought to you in part by Foosball Clubs USA, promoting foosball through school systems all over the country. Visit foosballclubsusa.com and make a donation today. And brought to you by the United States Table Soccer Organization, the USTSO, helping to usher in a new era of competitive foosball. Become a member yourself today and register at usafoosball.com. Well, hey there, I'm Tom Robinson. Welcome back to FoosTalk Live. We're ready to spend another Sunday evening talking about this beautiful game known as foosball. And of course, conversation is always a whole lot more interesting when you've got someone to share it with. Therefore, we must call on the great voice of foosball itself, the greatest play-by-play announcer of all time for foosball, Jim Stevens. Did I oversell that, Jim?
You might have, just a little bit. I'm blushing. If we were recording this for video tonight, you would see my ears are bright red right now. But thank you very much for the kind words, Tom Robinson, and it's great to be back here again on a Sunday night as we kind of focus in tonight on the 1990s with our special guest and with our other features, etc. And of course, when we're talking 1990s foosball, what is the biggest name of the 1990s in foosball? Of course, it's our good friend Mark Torres.
Mark, of course, from the 1990 Worlds. Mark?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. He sort of got that decade going with his incredible performance at that event when he and his partner, Fernando Rosa at that time, won the amateur doubles championship.
The mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight. In the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps. You said March was coming in like a lion.
Pitchy, I thought.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? There's nothing better than the sound of my own falsetto.
There's a few things.
There's a few things. Thank you, Clay.
I just thought I'd deliver the tokens to you guys.
I don't
know tokens.
For nothing.
What year,
God,
Marco? What year did the tokens make that a hit?
Yes. Let me think. I have no idea. It was black and white days, man.
All right. Jim, do you know the answer to that question?
It was Luke Christie who sang that, wasn't it?
No, actually, the tokens. The tokens made it a hit anyway.
Leave it to the radio.
But what year was it?
Oh, 1959, 60.
Oh, almost 1962. 1962.
Go to 62. All right. I was listening to the Beach Boys at that point. Actually, I was not listening to anything, but
well, I was not pitching.
The spirit was there. So, wow, this is taking a side road already here. We're talking about foosball. What's going on with this falsetto tokens thing? What is up with that?
Just trying to deliver some joy into your guys' worlds.
Oh,
but what were you saying? The 90s? What happened in the 90s?
Yeah,
I was in the 90s.
Right.
Yeah,
that was in a decade, I believe. Something like that.
I like to pretend all kinds of things about the 90s. But in my imagination, I gave up on foosball and being a Hall of Famer to go to college. And I don't know if there's any truth to that, but I tell myself that. There's my story.
There are nasty rumors going around that you were spotted last night out of your house.
All right, man.
Nasty rumors. What happened?
Yeah, I played my first draw your partner in either 7 or 8 years. I don't know what it is. It was a monster draw your partner, and I guess it's amazing. I loved it. So you play. I guess you play. You just play with different people until you get to a playoff, and I was 4-3. So we had 7 rounds. I played forward the whole night, which is stunning. And the reactions are so bad. Like my poor goalies would get stuffed because they'd shoot the ball, and I'd be a second late dropping my 5-bar, and it was just painful all night long on the poor guys in the back. I had ups and downs. I had some moments.
All right.
So I got there early, but I was burnt out and tired like before the tournament started because I don't have the endurance for foosball anymore.
Right.
So by 10:30, I was a mess hitting the wall. Well, I won my last match, did not make the playoff. Later on, I'll be recognizing the guys I played with during our toast, you guys, during our IPA.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah.
I don't know why they call that I don't know why it's called the Monster, but it's the best format in DYP.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Local
And
DYP.
how do if you're a
far.
local if you're a local promoter, you want to run an event on one night or whatever. Where do you find that Monster DYP, Mark?
So it's
There's an
it's
app,
actually
isn't there?
John. Well, you're talking about the app.
The app, yeah.
Is it the Kicker tool? Is that what you're using?
Kicker tool.
Yeah.
That sounds
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that sounds
Hey,
right.
Dave Raddick made one for Jason Wicks here in Dallas that I would say is better.
Really?
And I don't know if we're like sponsored by Kicker Tool or whatever. So hey, sorry if I
I don't know.
Not yet.
I'm just gonna go ahead and let you know the way
So it's even more monstrous than the Kicker Tool one.
I would say that it's monstrous and that Kicker Tool is just monstrosity.
Oh, man.
Fair enough.
Like I say, we're taking a side
It's
road
a
here.
great format. Even if you play
Kicker
like
Tool
hell.
is like .de, which means it's not .com, which means it's not American. I'm not going to support that. I'm going to go ahead and mute my mic. America. I'm kidding. That's a joke for anybody who doesn't know. It's not a joke.
What kind of car do you drive, Clay?
I don't drive a car. I drive a horse. The hell you talking about? I live in Texas. What do you mean? What kind of car you drive?
Yeah, speaking of Texas, looking forward to the great Dave Courington joining us tonight. The man
Nice.
behind Tornado Table Soccer for so long, the guy that really helped jumpstart that second golden era in the mid '80s, right on through. I don't know, went about 25 years, I think, at the helm of Tornado, and of course the '90s is what we're kind of really focusing in on tonight. Looking forward to spending a little time in that decade, which was the decade that, of course, Inside Foos started. It was the decade that the snake shot kind of came to the forefront. It's a decade that had so many great players competing. Players like Moore, Mares, Atkinson, Cartwright, Collignon. They all kind of came to prominence in that goalie. During the course of that '90s, 5 major championships every year. You could count on them. You knew where they were going to be, spread all over the country. The competitive balance of the '90s was really something, with 8 different players winning world championship titles during that decade, which is extraordinary. So, gonna have some fun spending some time on the 1990s, the second golden era of table soccer.
Yeah, and I understand that Dave really likes to talk, so that's another plus right there.
Never been a problem for good old Dave Kirk.
That's great to know. Looking forward to that. Well, I have to, forgive me for saying this, but when I got up this morning, I found a posting online of a local newspaper called the Daily Gazette out of Schenectady, New York, with a big article on one of my favorite players, people in the Albany area, who's now, well, he's just about to turn 13, but he's 12 and has already turned pro. Sam Dijon, absolutely proud of Sam Dijon. Just blows me away. I think Mark and I would discuss this earlier, that Billy Pappas turned pro right around the same exact age, just before the age of 13.
Right.
So this is momentous.
Great accolades to both. I'd call it both incredible achievements. They'll be rarely duplicated. It took 20 years for another child Fooser to do it. So I think it's an amazing achievement.
Yeah, no doubt. And one of these days we may be seeing those two going at it in open singles. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
For sure.
That would be just, who knows how soon that might be, but hopefully soon.
When's the last time Billy played singles? Was it Colorado State a couple years ago?
I believe so. I mean, I know he's shown up at a couple of tournaments here in the last few months. Correct? He
played Florida State. Is that what we're talking about? Oh no, sorry, singles.
Are you guys talking to the side? Like, are you like
Colorado?
half there?
Colorado State 2019. I think is the last time I saw him play singles, and of course, it's always great to watch him play singles. So exciting to see him shoot the ball from the 2-rod. His quick reactions, his ability to pick up loose balls. A very good defensive player when he wants to be, and of course, a dynamic 3-row.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Now, how old was Billy when he went pro master? Does anybody know?
Yeah, Billy, I think turned pro. And then there was a period probably between, 14 and 18, somewhere in there, where we didn't see Billy quite as much, and kind of wondered, I think, whether or not he would continue to play foosball. And then when he did come back, he had certainly matured both on and off the table. Mm-hmm. So I think it was probably a little later than that. If Sam Dijon continues to play, perhaps And again, that means he's got to start beating those players that are above him, the pros, the master players. He's going to have to start notching those high finishes in open events as well, in big fields, in very highly competitive fields. But with the game he has, and of course with the coaching that he has, with the people surrounding him, with his love of the game, I think it's certainly something that is well within his ability to accomplish.
So what do you think?
True that tonight's top 5 is the top 5 players to use a step stool?
That's not a bad one.
I like that. Put Chris Dooley up there.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
Somewhere.
No question.
Sure. My kid would be like a 3 and 5.
So what do you think what would be the best path Sam could take when it comes to let's say coaching? Obviously, Tony Sprademan would be somebody he could study under, or Ryan Moore, more specifically because of Foos gear. I mean,
those are all. None of those are bad. Some people are better players than coaches. Frankly.
Okay.
An actual supreme coach is someone like Todd Loffredo.
Yes.
He's a supreme coach. He's a guy. But the Inside Foos archive is also as good a coach as any. If he listens and watches, the library is as good a coach as any.
Which he does. Yes, I know he does do that. Yep. Yeah. That's part of his regimen with Nino, his dad. So yeah. Very cool.
And so much of it is table time, as Mark has talked about, the 10,000 hours, and maybe Sam's already there. Who knows? But it's that, and it's vitally important. It is so important to play against better players than yourself in very competitive situations. Frederico Collignon, greatest player in Europe, came over here in order to learn that, in particular, to get against these legendary players on the American tour.
Right.
And without having done that, without having come over here, taken some beatings for 2 or 3 or 4 years on the American tour, steadily getting better and better until he figured it out. And when he figured it out, of course, he really did. But he never would have become that player without competing against better players.
Understood.
And gaining the experience,
on a regular basis. I mean, we've got one pro master in the Albany area, Kevin Walker. But Sam was already gave him a pretty good game even a year or more ago before COVID kicked in. We had a local smash down where Kevin and Sammy went at it, and Sam almost beat him. So yeah. Looks like.
And again, we're being a little bit America-centric here as well.
Yes.
It's really important for Sam to compete internationally in multi-table events. That's where the best players are really being judged these days, and into the future. Certainly, that is going to be the case. Best players in the world are the best multi-table players. And Sam has some experience. He's gone over in 17 and in 19 to compete for Team USA to get a bronze medal in 19 and under 12 junior singles. But the competitive environment internationally in the junior division is really high.
Right.
There are a lot of great players, a lot of great multi-table players. He needs to get over there, continue to battle against those guys if he really wants to be considered among the best in the world. And
sure.
I'm
muted.
So Jim's got a great beat going.
It's very difficult to do that, by the way.
He's actually
the consistency.
Is anybody aware that
that's why he's the best?
Jim has a side
still
hustle.
Doing it, Tom. Oh my gosh.
Jim has a side hustle going. It's
I kind of want to hear it. I just want to listen to it. But
he's actually one of these dub mixers. He does a lot of dub mixing on the side, and he's in great demand in the field. So yeah,
most people don't know it's actually DJ Jim Stevens.
Yeah, there you go. DJ Jim Stevens.
Next Headroom. Jim Headroom.
I wonder if he's still talking. What do you guys think?
Text that guy.
You gotta love the interweb.
Over and under on how many minutes he talks before he realizes that he's on a loop.
I can't even do it 5 times. Yaga.
Hold on, let's try to go.
Let me see.
Again.
He's still there.
Let me text him.
He needs
all right,
to.
there we go. Sounds like he's
all right.
Either disconnected or he's. But I was actually thinking he's talking about.
Guys.
Sam.
I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yeah,
we can hear you.
Can now.
Yeah.
Wait till you hear the recording of that. By the way,
I had no idea what you're talking about. I could hear everything you're saying the entire time. By the way,
I love it.
But anyway, let's get back to the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Nice distraction, Jim. Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
That was hardcore.
I can't wait for you to hear that, Jim. That was great.
That was good stuff. Well,
hilarious.
I think it's getting to the point now where things are going so far sideways. We definitely need to sample a social lubricant.
What Jim and I like to do right about this time is to reveal our favorite IPA.
And if you can do this in one syllable, that'd be great, Jim.
Again, I have no clue what you guys are talking about. Literally, I do not. But I assume this is my time to speak.
Oh, yeah.
And you want me to keep it short? All right. Having an IPA tonight, folks. What are you having tonight, Tom?
Jim, what kind of IPA? What are you sampling?
A Opulent IPA out of
Opulent.
Epic Brewing in Denver, Colorado. It's staying in our home state here. It's actually 8.2 alcohol by volume. It's actually served in a large bottle.
8.2?
8.2. Yeah.
Wow.
It's
And
8 fluid ounces, so 20-ounce bottle of beer, and it looks really good. I'm going to give it a try out. Boy, that is outstanding as usual.
No kidding. Yeah, no, it's interesting. Lately, I found a local resource when it comes to IPAs. There's a place called Saratoga Mercantile, and the owner there is a real fan of IPAs, and he gathers stuff you'd never seen anywhere else. And he just turned me on to something called Fat Orange Cat. That's the name of the brewery out of North Haven, Connecticut. And they have an IPA, Baby Kittens IPA. So let's see how this purrs. Hold on one second here. 6.5% alcohol by volume.
I was expecting it to be called lasagna.
Ooh, that's exceptional. That is actually really good. Baby Kittens. Ah, yeah. Coming from a cat dad, here's to you. Mark, are you back on the hard stuff yet?
Just water, man. It's been water for whatever. I've only had water. I figured, I didn't know this, but I was addicted to LaCroix, I think. And I Googled it, and no one knows why they're addicted to LaCroix. It's whatever, carbonated with an essence. But I stopped drinking. I've only been drinking water. I'm drinking water. That's what it is, water. That's it.
And Clay?
Good old-fashioned Dr. Pepper, 10-2-4, and apparently also 8. So
Dr. Pepper.
That's me actually opening that, by the way. That's not a sound.
Always
No,
so
that's
fascinating
great.
to hear
That's
Mark
real.
Clay's drink choices, no doubt about it.
I have I'm
water
twin
and
engine.
Dr. Pepper again.
Yeah. Well, as long as you got a glass in your hand, we
alrighty.
need to toast our honor group of the week. And this week we're heading to the west side of the country. It's called Northwest, or an NW Foosball. Foosball players from Washington State, Oregon, British Columbia, Idaho, Alaska, Montana, and Alberta. I guess they have a full team out of those states. Washington,
Idaho?
Oregon.
Yeah.
Why
Great
Idaho?
players up there, great guys as well.
Is Idaho
And I gotta-
considered Northwest?
I don't know. I've never actually. I don't know. I thought Idaho was just like a.
No, it's yeah.
I didn't realize that was an actual place. I thought it was just like a concept.
I thought it was a potato factory. I gotta toast the Chicagoland foosball group. Their Facebook page. Great group of guys. John McDermott, who hosts a foosball tournament. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think he has 6 tables in his basement, including a fireball. And that was where the Monster DYP was played. Rich Cotter, I got to meet some people that I'm friends with on Facebook that I never met personally. I want to say hi to Rich Cotter, but a group of great guys. So thank you, Chicagoland Foosball on Facebook, John McDermott, Rich Cotter, and all the rest. It was a great time. Thank you.
Follow the group for sure.
Oh.
On Facebook. Yeah. So do they do? Are they going to be doing Monster DYPs on a regular basis there?
They do a tournament every Saturday. Every once in a while, it goes till Friday. So if you're in the Chicagoland area, I drove 45 minutes. It's a great, great tournament. They have software, and they call you up on tables. There's foosball playing. Jim is on TVs doing inside foos stuff while people are playing.
Jeez.
Fun. So they do a Monster DYP. They're going to have a Bring Your Partner next week. So it's a regular deal. It's a pretty great group of guys out here.
Outstanding. Well, here's
Jim,
to
what
you
would
guys.
it take to get you to do like play-by-play for a local? It's totally putting you on the spot, but like where you just like pipe in the video. Torres and I have done this a little bit with some local stream.
No, you know, it's something we've talked about. Certainly, moving forward and with technology being what it is, it kind of makes it easy to bring a stream in and then be able to monitor it from wherever we are. Mark and I potentially could sit in on an evening at some place in America or around the world and talk foosball and do a little play-by-play. So that's something we're looking at, and maybe that's something we will execute in the future.
We could make it you'd have to have a contest, let's say, and enter your team or your club to have like a final match called by Jim.
Yeah,
that's cool. I like that idea.
Yeah. That's a great idea. Write that down, Tom.
Better than a
$10,000
T-shirt,
entry
right?
fee. Everybody can just
Yeah.
Pony up the money.
All right.
I think that'd be awesome. And and from the technical side, I'll just go ahead and volunteer right here in front of God and everybody to help do that, because I think that'd be awesome.
Oh,
Love
yeah.
it. Love
yeah.
it.
Absolutely. Very, very cool. Well, we are focusing on the 1990s this evening. The top 5 coming up from Dave Courington. Let's go back to the 1990s for our FoosTalk Live Flashback.
With great moments in foosball history, this is a FoosTalk Live Flashback.
Trying to stroke that long. Rebound carries to the 5 of Wyman. Squirts backward now in possession of Mares. Mares takes it off the outside wall into the goal. Break right there, and they'll take it. They could use a couple of more of those. It's now 4-2 as Collignon, the 23-year-old gentleman from the age Belgium, moves to that forward position. Looking to advance the ball to his 3. Covers over the ball. Goes along that wall. Frederico Collignon looking for the World Championship, looking to double here in 99, looking to win the doubles title for the second consecutive year. He strokes it home, and for the second consecutive year, Frederico Collignon and Todd Loffredo are the World Open Doubles champions.
Congratulations out to Frederico and Todd, also to Rob and Scotty. Just a fantastic match.
So Frederico Collignon, barely old enough to drink champagne, and obviously hasn't drank it too many times. Not too pleased with the taste, apparently, but he loves the taste of victory. He doubles here at the World Championships, winning singles and winning doubles for the second straight year. And Frederico Collignon is amazing.
Listen in next time for another great moment in foosball history. It's FoosTalk Live Flashback.
So Freddie doesn't like the taste of champagne. Is that true?
Yeah, no, we had him on camera at the time. He was having a sip out of the champagne bottle, and it really looked like maybe it was his first one ever. And the look on his face for a good 30, 40 seconds after that was one of great distaste. That's when 1998 he came in and won doubles with Loffredo, the first time that he had ever won in the United States. Came back the next year in 99. This was 1999. To win both singles and doubles, and then the next year I think he tripled from there. So,
wow.
So it was quite a beginning to his career. And one thing, we have our top 5 greatest moments, greatest performances rather of the 1990s on the tornado table, and that actually is not my top 5. That one there, despite the fact that he doubled in 1999.
Really? Well, that's saying something right there about your top 5.
Spoiler alert! It is in my top 5.
It is.
So
it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the debate is already raging. So wow. Okay. So yeah. So
that just goes to show you. I mean, that decade produced so many great performances from so many great players. Again, 8 different singles players and close to maybe 7 different doubles teams in that decade. Won world championships and so there was really only one category that was dominated. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as well.
I dig it. Well, I would say that since we've got such a fascinating guest, we may as well get to our top 5 as quickly as we possibly can. Again, this is the top 5 best performances of the 1990s in the tornado world.
Time once again for the FoosTalk Live Top 5.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Here's Jim Stevens and Mark Torres.
Marching in. And again, the 1990s, Mark, that seems like so long ago. 1990 in particular seems like, more than 30 years ago even. But this was the 90s were kind of pre 9/11 innocence here in this country, right? It was a little bit of a different world back then, and it was certainly a different tour. We kind of documented some of it earlier for you in the broadcast, but there were so many great performances, and I've got several honorable mentions as well. But wasn't hard to come up with great performances in that decade.
Yeah, and let me kind of set the stage a little bit because I'm very fond of the 90s, right? Because that's when I was playing. It was a potpourri of people from the 70s and 80s that were sticking around. Even people that were great on Dynamo had stuck around a little bit in the 90s. And then there was this influx of players that were playing. I don't know where they were coming from. There was just so many players. It was still growing, with Dave Courington at the helm and Link Penley. It was so you had this huge confluence of different market segments that were still all playing at the same time. And the one last thing I'll say before we get to the top 5, you mentioned it, Jim, how many different teams, with exception won open doubles and how many different people won open singles. And in the 90s, in the finals, there would be some usual suspects, but there would always be upset teams. There would always be the team you did not expect in the finals of doubles or singles because there was just that many players. It was so competitive. Someone else, it was game versus game because there was a lot less people fighting. There was a lot more people fighting. So you had more randomness in the finals. That was a fun, exciting time. And every once in a while, someone pulled it off. Someone pulled it off and upset the favorite. Anyway, that's my shtick on the 90s. We can get started, man.
FoosTalk Live Top 5. Number.
So at my number 5, and we could always come at this thing from different angles. I took performance as something a spectacle or some event, and in my mind, that Frederico doubling in open doubles and open singles, but doubling also winning open doubles in 98 and 99. That was a top 5 performance for me. When you go for decades without a European player winning a world championship, I don't know if anyone ever did. I know Dieter got in the finals and Benty did, but Fred was a breakthrough when he won open doubles in 98, and the double and win singles and doubles in 99 would be the start of what we all know would be unprecedented and probably unmatched and unrivaled run forever. I don't know if we'll ever see that kind of dominance again. And so I got Fred double, 98 and then 99. That's my number 5.
Yeah, no, how can you not put that in there? Of course, monumental performance, and I left it out only because of the other 5 that I do have in there.
Yeah,
but that was the second in a row for Loffredo and Collignon, second of 5 in a row, and the second of what eventually would be 12 championships in 15 years, which just remarkable for that team. My number 5, and I'm going to 1994, and I'm going to go here a couple of times potentially. But, one thing that kind of gets lost in the shuffle is in 1994, Cindy Head won her 9th straight Tornado World Championship title in women's singles. 9 in a row. She won 9 straight women's singles world championships. And 5 straight of those were in the 1990s. She won every one up through 1994 and then picked up another 1 or 2. But the competition started to strengthen with Moya Thielens coming in and some other great forwards. So between 1986 and 1994, she won the women's singles title at the Worlds every single time. And so that 9th straight, I remember it. I remember, ESPN was there that year documenting her win, documenting the tournament. And I mean, what a run of dominance. And we kind of took it for granted. We just said, wow, she's great. She's winning singles. She's winning doubles most years as well. But now we look back at that and just really recognize just how remarkable a feat that was for this lady who is considered, certainly by me and by most and by all pundits of the sport, the greatest lady player to ever play the game anywhere. But it was 1994, 9 straight women's singles world championships for Cindy Head.
FoosTalk Live Top 5. Number 4.
So my number 4 is 94 as well, but it's Tom Spear winning open singles in 94. And I love that memory because, Tom was a great champion in the 70s, great champion in the 80s. Now here we are in the 90s, and the rollover is starting to creep in and take a grip on foosball in what would become the dominant 3-bar shot for the ensuing decade. And so here's Tom Spear. His game is really, really different than it was. And frankly, we wouldn't know it at the time. You could kind of tell in retrospect. But here's a man in the twilight of his foosball career, laying it all out on the line against Terry Moore. Terry Moore, who we know what Terry Moore becomes in the 90s, the most dominant forward of the 90s. And he's going back and forth, toe-to-toe, scrapping from the goalie area, from the 2-bar, shooting his pull shot, making his pull shot in that moment. He was never known for lateral speed. He was never known for a really hard, fast shot. He was known for precision and accuracy. And here he was scrapping, pulling everything he could out of his decades-long book of tactics and strategies and skill, and pulls off that win. It's probably the end of an era. It was probably the end of an era for Tom Spear as a champion, and it was a way to go out on that 94 open singles win.
Yeah, my number 4. My number 4 is it's kind of a mixed bag here a little bit. The lead story in this segment here is Terry Moore winning the 1992 kickoff with a snake shot. Entering that season, well, John Smith had dabbled with it. He'd showed it a little bit here and a little bit there. No one had ever won. No one had ever played a complete tournament and used the snake shot and won until that 1992 kickoff. And it really changed everything, obviously. To this day, still, it remains the predominant shot in the entire world. But I also got to follow it up with a second Terry Moore performance during that decade. And that was the 1997 season. In that season, remember, 5 major championships, basically 15 major open championship events, singles, doubles, mixed doubles, right? Terry won 8 of them that year, 8 open championships out of 15. Now you look at it these days, you say, well, look at Tony Sprademan. Okay, that's fine. We get it. Tony dominates even more than that. But the level of competition, as we have documented here tonight, was 20 deep, and here is Terry Moore that season, 97, 5 years after he broke through with a snake shot, which changed the sport entirely. But he has a season where he wins 8 of the 15 open championships. And during that era, a remarkable, remarkable performance. But really, Terry Moore, the snake shot, the 1990s, they all go together. They've changed foosball history, even to this day. So my number 4, Moore, winning in 1992 with a kickoff at the kickoff of the snake, while also having a heck of a 97 season.
FoosTalk Live Top 5. Number 3.
This may come as a oddity to some of you who weren't there to see it, but you had to be there to see it. And if you ask people about it who were there when it happened, you would understand where I was coming from. As a matter of fact, if you ask Lewis Cartwright about this memory, he will tell you that he'd never seen it the way he saw it in this event. Dave Gummison winning open singles in 95. The most miraculous thing about that win was his 2-bar. Everyone will tell you his 2-bar was absolutely unstoppable. Dave Gummison will tell you he never shot this way ever again after this 95 open singles. He either scored or flipped your min over. And I thought, after I saw Dave Gummison win that open singles title in 95, I thought he would never, ever lose singles again. What I didn't understand was what I was looking at. What I was looking at is there's always a hole open. When you're shooting a pull shot from the 2-bar, there's always a hole open. And for some anomalous reason, Dave hit the hole every single time, whether it was a spray, a squared off first hole, a cut back middle, or a long pull shot. He scored a miraculous amount, and it was the singular reason why he won open singles in 95. Someone asked Lewis Cartwright what he'll tell you. He'll tell you is unbelievable. Couldn't imagine it. Dave crushed him in that open singles event. Dave Gummison, open singles world champion, 1995. That's my number 3.
Yeah, no, it's a good one too. I remember it well. I remember Dave was just amazing. A testament to how much practice he had put in and where he was mentally. I don't know that he expected to win that weekend. He was a little bit surprised when that last ball went in. But what an incredible performance. And as you said, Mark, he didn't just do it with the 5 and with the 3. He was also shooting well from goal, playing good, smart defense. Just really, really was the best player there that weekend. No question about it. My choices here are things that I think I had 10 of them, and Gummison was one of my 10, along with Doobie and Schrock winning in 94, very memorable. And that's really the theme for me. What stuck with me? What to this day can I think back on and get chills and remember how it was and the impact that it had on the sport? And certainly Collignon and Loffredo winning in 1998 in doubles was a big one. That was a really big one. I had been a Frederico Collignon fan for several years. I saw this guy. I knew what he was about. I knew he was coming. And he wasn't the most popular player out on tour. In fact, he was not well liked at all for the most part. So when I did hear, in the story has been told with Ingrid and after the Las Vegas tournament, et cetera, they're hooking up and going to play at the Worlds. Boy, was I excited. I thought, oh my God, this is an amazing team. They are going to win it. And they did. And they did it in phenomenal fashion with incredible teamwork and Fred doing his thing and Todd becoming a goalie. Todd had always had good goalie skills, especially offensively. And of course, his IQ on the table was always so high. But this made Todd Loffredo a goalie. And as a result, made him probably the greatest goalie in the history of the sport. But this was the first of those 12 wins together. And it was amazing. And it was shocking to many because, as Mark talked about earlier, no foreign player, no international player had ever won at the Tornado World Championships. There had been some good performances, but nobody had shown up, and especially with a pin shot, and been able to do what Collignon could do. These are all the ones that I'm kind of choosing are sort of signature moments that sort of shifted the sport one way or the other, or evolved it forward. So my number 3, Collignon Loffredo, 1998 Tornado World Championships in Fort Worth, Texas, the only one ever held there. And it was his first of what would become eventually 28, Tom Robinson, 28 Tornado World Championship
28
Open titles, World Championships, 28 World Championships on the American Tour on the Tornado table, which was his worst table.
Foos Talk Live Top 5. Number 2.
Okay, let's take a step back in time for those of us that don't have a point of reference. When the 90s, the brackets were full. The brackets were overflowing, and you had to play that extra 1 or 2 matches because the brackets are full. Currently, at a major, you could win 2 or 3 matches and be playing for third. You had to play those extra matches in the 90s, and it was the biggest variable because you'd have to, and I've said this on a prior broadcast, you start off, if you're a pro team, you may start off with a super hot rookie team. And then you're playing a pro team, like a good pro team. And then you're playing another pro team before you get to a master seed. So you had to play all these matches. That's why in the 90s, you had upsets all the time. You could walk around the room in the first and second round. You'd have masters that were playing some unknown novice team from God knows where, and they're sweating bullets. It's worse for them because they know the enemy they do know. They know the other Masters games, but you get these other guys, and it's terrifying. They're in the clutch, stressed out, and trying to get past that match. You always had upsets. You always had people in the finals of doubles that you did not expect to be there, and that's why in the thick of all this, when Loffredo and Scotty Weidman double, the first team to double in open doubles, and it was 94 and 95, I think. I think that's right. 94 and 95, yeah. Scotty and Todd double. And back then, remember, no one was doubling. I mean, you didn't win 2 tournaments in a row like that. Not in anything. You were lucky if you won 2 majors in a row. Winning 2 worlds in a row was crazy. This was an achievement at the time. This was a monumental event and a testament to Todd in his prime as a forward, having brought up Scotty. And it was just a couple years before. Scotty Weidman was an amateur playing with Tom Speer. They get to the finals of open doubles. Tom Speer calls 3 timeouts and gets a technical shot. Scotty Weidman, as an amateur, has an opportunity to win open doubles, taking a shot from the 3-bar. Scotty Weidman comes back from that under Todd's tutelage. They back-to-back win open doubles at the Worlds at the time. Momentous achievement. That's my number 2. Scotty and Todd doubling back-to-back.
Yeah, no, phenomenal one again in my top 10, but didn't quite make it. Yes, it was huge. First time it had ever happened, etc. But I didn't feel like it shifted things one way or the other, or really advanced them that much. Still, an amazing achievement, no doubt about it. My number 2 kind of bleeds over a little bit onto yours. The first of their 2 world championships, back-to-back, came in 1994, as did the aforementioned win by Tom Speer. Tom Speer was not the favorite entering that event, no question about it. He'd kind of come and kind of gone. We knew how great he was, but yeah, Terry Moore was in his prime. Johnny Horton was still out there competing. Obviously Loffredo, etc. But Tom Speer comes to Dallas in 1994. One of maybe the biggest event I've ever been to. It was huge, right? Mark, you were there. Right. Gigantic tournament. ESPN is there covering it. So much excitement. It's my second year. Dante Bichette is there, the ball player out of from the Colorado Rockies, who finished second the following year in the MVP balloting in the National League in baseball. He was sitting in the booth doing commentary with me, and he was playing, doing well in expert singles, and all of these things happening in 1994. And Tom Speer, the colorful Tom Speer, backed by all of his cronies from the Front Range, from Denver, Colorado, backing him, cheering for him, pushing him. And for him to win, it was unexpected. He played just, perfect foosball, an absolute signature moment of the decade. I remember it so clearly. And of course, a lot of that painted now by looking back on the life of Tom Speer and where he is now and how he got there and where he was at that point. And as Mark said earlier, it was sort of Tom's towards the end of his career. He had a few more years, picked up a win, I think, in 98 in mixed doubles at the Nationals. But for the most part, it was an amazing moment. And to see him lifted on the shoulders of his fellow Colorado players, and if you go to the Inside Foos website, if you ever have, you see that picture there all the time of Tom being lifted up. And And of course, just an amazing moment in foosball, and for me, number 2 in the 1990s.
FoosTalk Live proudly presents the top 5. Number 1.
All right, Mark, where'd you go?
I didn't even know how to reconcile this, man. It's just I only my only response to it was Terry and Bobby. It's like, what do you do? Like Terry and Bobby, they won 14 majors, I think, open doubles majors. Like, so like, okay, prior to having Frederico and Todd, which we know happens in the ensuing decade, there was Terry and Bobby were the deal. They went to every tournament. That's 14 majors. We don't even know the regionals and state tournaments, trophies that would fill any basement. Like a win, all they did was go around and win. And Terry Moore's game, brush up, brush down, wall pass. That's it. Pass on 1 or 10. Bobby Diaz with a signature 3-card Monty defense. He's always blocking a piece. You gotta hit a perfect hole to score on Bobby, clearing the ball, like consummate doubles play. Just the perfect team at the time. No other team embodies or is a signature for the 90s. So it's Terry Moore, Bobby Diaz, the team of the 90s, and the spectacle of the 90s.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you get maybe the greatest goalie, or certainly one of them of all time, and at the time the greatest forward of that decade. The one thing that scars their record, 14 open doubles or championships, but only the one world championship. They had picked up 2, maybe they had picked up 3 world championships in that decade. We'd look at them as unquestionably the second greatest team of all time. But really, I don't think they are. Yet they were definitely the team of the 1990s, an amazing run. It was really only about a 5 or 6 year run because they didn't pair up towards the middle of the decade. My number 1, and I'm a little selfish here, because again, this was the year before 1994, which I talked about in number 2. This was 1993. First time Inside Foos comes to the Worlds. All right. They set me up in a booth in this big pit area with bleachers across the way that extended up into the sky about 15 rows. Mm-hmm. Everybody was so happy to have us there. And then Tommy Atkinson, 18 years old, out of Oklahoma, comes storming out of the gate. And he had been building towards this, right? He had won some state championships. He had performed well on the major tour. He was coming. This was the next big thing. And this is when he broke through. He wins open singles. He beats Terry Moore in the open singles final. He then goes to open doubles, playing with Russ King, goes up against Steve Viney and Don Swan in a classic open doubles final, made famous by a push kick from goal from Russ King, and then Tommy Atkinson switching from a pull shot to a snake at just the right time. And then Tommy, after that second win, when he is just sky high, he is the world is sky high. His people are surrounding him. The place is just vibrant, so energetic after that win. It's the din of noise, the explosion of excitement after he wins doubles, because we know he's got one more final coming. He can triple. He could become the second player ever after Steve Murray in '87 to triple. But he runs into Steve and Gina Murray, who methodically take him apart.
Yeah.
And he just didn't triple, did take second, but what an explosive performance. For me, this was eye-opening. This was my first big world championship working as a commentator. It was magic to me. The performance was magic. No doubt about it, in my mind, from my perspective, that the biggest moment of the 1990s, the greatest performance of the 1990s, was Tommy Atkinson in 1993.
You know, if anyone remembers, dude, they had a Calcutta. Russ King ran a Calcutta and took odds on all the main teams except for no odds on Tommy and Russ. Russ took in thousands of dollars on a betting line and did not include his team that won on the betting line. So they raked that. I don't know if he won more money winning open doubles or more money on the betting line. It was a killer weekend for Russ King.
Betting on foosball? Betting.
Yeah, completely illegal and not advised. Please do not do Calcuttas, please.
What is a Calcutta?
Don't do it.
Exactly.
Well, basically, you give odds on all the teams. So like Todd, Loffredo, and Scotty were 8-5 or whatever. You had low odds, you had high odds, and he made a ton of money on the betting line. There's some,
unfortunately, it's some of the players that are involved with the betting as well, and that's where you run into the gray area on this one. And so I've always been suspicious of them and not in favor of them necessarily, at least if the players are involved. But an interesting point, and that was part of the fabric of that event as well.
Oh yeah, it was very entertaining at the time.
Well, every pro sport has had that, right? Every pro sport at some time or another has some kind of backroom dealing going on. For players who decide to bet against themselves or against their own teams.
Not legally, certainly.
No.
And some have paid with their careers and played with the potential Hall of Fame induction, right, in the case of Steve Rose. I did want to get to a few others of my I don't want to forget about John Smith as well, who doubled in 1991. What a great performance there. And, in 1993, Todd Loffredo tripled at the national championships. I think that was his last triple, but a triple at the nationals for Loffredo in 93 in New Orleans. We mentioned Doobie and Schrock winning in 94 at the U.S. Open. Don Swan. This one barely missed making the list for me. 1995 national championships up in San Francisco. It's open singles final, Don Swan versus Todd Loffredo, and they play the final at breakneck speed. No, the ball never stopped. It just kept going. These two incredibly talented guys go back and forth. I was trying to keep up with it as a commentator. And it was the most entertaining match I'd ever seen up till then. It remains one of the most entertaining I've ever seen. Swan winning in 95 the Nationals. He also had another moment later in the decade when he beat Terry Moore in the Masters Singles Championship in 14 minutes. We called it the 14-minute masterpiece.
Wow.
And he beat Terry Moore, who would have quadrupled at that tournament, by the way, in Atlanta if he had won the Masters Singles along with the other three that he'd already notched. So those are some of my honorable mentions, Mark.
For me, Todd, for a couple of things. Todd used to win singles all the time. Todd gets grief for not winning open singles at the Worlds, which he didn't, but he used to win open singles all the time. I was just going to make the remark that Todd, the World Championships for Todd was the tournament to win. So he would go around and he would win these other tournaments and do really, really great. He'd double, he'd triple, he'd go to the Worlds, and it was like open doubles was Todd's goal at the Worlds. He won, and who call it what you will. Call it back, him harkening back to 78 when he won with Gil Jackson. And for him, that's always been the key that turns the wheel, except for, I'll say this. Well, didn't he work hard on the Foosballers? When the Foosballers documentary was being filmed, he worked as hard as he's ever worked, from what I can tell from that movie, to win or get in the finals of open singles. And guess what? He was in the finals of open singles. It just shows you how great Todd was and what things that Todd could do if he set his mind to it.
And still can.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
Right, for sure. Remarkable foosball specimen.
So now you mentioned earlier, Mark, that a lot of the folks that had been in the first golden age of foosball, some of them had actually stuck around, other than Todd. Tom Spear being another. How many others were actually in contention back in the 90s?
A lot. They had Randy Stark. You had Johnny Horton was still there. You had guys like Starcheski. You had Bacon. Yeah, Gummison. Adrian Zamora was a dynamo guy. You had a lot of people that were in the early 90s. I can't even name them. There's so many I can't even name them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, tons.
Yeah, a lot of those were dynamo guys. Dynamo guys tended to stick around and sort of transition over to Tornado. Many of them did. Many of them didn't. But there weren't a lot of tournament soccer guys that stuck around. As we've talked about, the crash of tournament soccer really ended a lot of careers.
Yeah,
right.
Very few that continued on. Loffredo, of course, being the foremost one. Dave Gummison, who as well. So a lot of fun tonight to keep focusing on the 1990s.
I want to hear Dave Courington come in when you introduce him and hear his feedback on what his memory of the 90s. These specific top five. When you're ready, Tom.
I think actually we can do that now. In fact, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome, first of all, a Hall of Famer, a former Tornado president, and the man responsible for launching foosball's second golden era. Let's please put it together for Dave Courington from Dallas, Texas this evening. Dave, are you with us?
I am. Thank you very much for inviting me on the show.
Yeah.
And before we go any further, I feel compelled to make a correction. I was never president of Tornado Foosball. I'm a working still. I was vice president of sales and promotions, but I just had a job to do there. I wasn't the man driving the train. I had to lay the tracks.
Gotcha. Well, we stand corrected, but nonetheless, certainly high up in the organization. And how many years did you spend at Tornado?
Well, if you count from when I bought my first table in '76, that would have been until 7 years ago.
Wow. Okay. A long career, to say the least. Well, Dave, first of all, we want to thank you for joining us on FoosTalk Live. It's a tradition that I kind of delve into the very early days. So I'm very curious when it comes to you as a foosball player, because you were a player. When was the first time you saw a table, and what kind was it? And when was the first time you actually decided to play this game?
Well, the first time I saw a foosball table was in 1974. I was doing construction work in Decatur, Alabama, and we got rained out that day. So as many construction workers do, we headed to the Topless Club. And
okay.
In Huntsville, Alabama, right past Redstone Arsenal, the first titty bar on the left was Fat Harry's Lounge.
Fat Harry's.
And that's where I saw my first foosball table.
Wow. And
after that, a couple of weeks later, still in Alabama, me and two of my cousins went to a bowling center in Jasper, and there was a huge crowd of people over in the corner yelling, screaming, and we were there bowling, but they were having a foosball tournament there. So then soon after, I came to Texas and still doing construction work, and a gentleman had moved to Texas from Florida, Steve Williams, the Florida Flash, he called
Florida
himself.
Flash.
But he moved as a lot of people did, to Houston because of the foosball play. Now, Steve was a pipe fitter's helper, and my job was to give him as much grief as I could.
Love it.
So, oh man, my car broke down. You got to help me out. There's a tournament in Dallas. Screw you. I ain't being seen in public with your ratty ass. You know, on and on and on. But he kept begging me and kept begging me. He said, it's a $125 tournament. It's a singles tournament. I'm going to win it, and I'll give you half. You can drink beer, chase women. All you have to do is drive me there and come back.
Wow.
Well, the two aforementioned activities I was pretty keen on. So I drove him there, and this was the Double Eagle. What was the name of the foos hall? At that time, there were 6 foos halls in Houston with 30 or more tables each.
Wow, 30 or more? That's incredible. 6 of them.
And a whole bunch with 6 to 16 tables. So anyhow, I went. Steve did exactly what he said he'd do. He won the tournament, beat players like Joe Campion, Ronnie Lewis, Carl Peterson, George Garber. Ran through them pretty quickly.
Real.
And so as about midway through the event, I seen that there was a method to the madness, and I found myself over in the table trying to hit a ball around.
Okay.
And it wasn't too long after that, we started going out pretty regularly, since he had proved his worth. We would leave. The job we were working was a 4 10-hour day job. We would get home on Thursday night, shower, shave, pack, head to Fat City over in New Orleans, northern New Orleans there, and we would ramble and gamble until Sunday afternoon. And then we would sometimes make it back in time to get some sleep. Sometimes we'd just drive straight to the job site. So that's pretty much how it started for me. But I will say this: after I got enough nerve to play in a tournament, I was playing with a gentleman that I worked with, another guy from Florida, Otto Ard, who had the most devastating 5-man shot. He made grown people cry across the country. And we won the first foosball tournament I ever entered. So I thought I was really something special. But
you won the first tournament you ever entered.
First tournament I ever entered, $100 tournament at a place called Ship's Wheel in Clear Lake, Texas.
No kidding. That's pretty extraordinary. I mean, not too many people can say that. And what kind of foosball tables were they?
Those were real dynamos, not the cheap imitation you guys are always talking about.
The real dynamo.
Correct.
Not the fake kind. Wow.
No. The dynamos of the 70s, right?
Yeah, and you know, people make a big deal, and I endorse it, by the way, of multi-table events.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all don't know what you're talking about when you talked about multi-table events. In Houston, we would play on Hurricanes, Dynamos, Best Tables, Challengers, Bandits, Mirko, American. And as a foosball historian and manufacturer, I know that in the mid-'70s, there was 43 different foosball manufacturers in the 43? United States. Not counting all that stuff coming from across the pond.
Wow, 43. I had no idea.
Dave.
I know you don't. That's why I wanted to mention it. You guys were just talking about, and I remember Billy Pappas, and I knew his mother really well. I remember when Billy came to the tournament in Cleveland, Ohio, and just scared everyone. I remember Russ King was, not Russ King, Brian King was working the tournament for me. He was just begging me early Saturday morning, I've got to be off Sunday to play 35 and 17 with this kid. I've got to. So
which they won.
So
which I believe they won that event.
No, Brian King. Wait, was that Brian King?
Nope.
Okay,
yeah, Brian King and Billy Pappas, 92 in Cleveland, Ohio.
Hold on, there was one event. No, I wasn't there. That's different. They might have won that one. I remember the one he lost when he was 9, playing forward for Brian King, and he cried. That's where I met him. He was crying because he lost in the finals of 3,500 limited. I think is what it was.
It happens.
Yeah. So you mentioned Nino's son, Sam.
Yes.
Yeah.
I knew the father and proud to have been around the son a little. I think he's a tremendous guy.
Yep.
But in 1976, I saw a shirtless Ronnie Joyner, who was 9 years old, playing forward for his father. And when they were playing for fourth place, they made Ronnie put a shirt on at a $10,000 tournament here in Dallas. So,
wow.
So there's been youngsters playing a lot, but multi-table, and so I mentioned just some of those tables. Now, there's all kinds of different tables from all different parts of the region.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was, when I first started playing, you had a hotbed of players from up in New York, and in different parts of New York, you certainly had different players. You even had some Rene Pierre players up there,
yes,
really strong in the Finger Lake area.
Mm-hmm.
Down in Virginia, the French style table was great. The Carolinas. Then you got down in Florida, where there was two separate. Florida was in foosball, two separate states. L.A. is what I call the Panhandle, Lower Alabama. That was more of a Texas style table, and then when you got down where it goes towards Cuba, that was more of the tournament soccer style. But you had a tremendous player base out of Tennessee, Louisiana, St. Louis, Chicago, Minneapolis, North and South Dakota, Denver, Kansas City. Kim Garacki, who doesn't get his dues. Kim Garacki, people always say, you can't bank on a tornado table.
I've seen it done, though.
I wasn't the only one he made cry doing that. Of course, you're pretty good at documenting. You had players in the Denver area, up in the Northwest. NorCal had its own separate group of good players, Southern California, Arizona. So, but there was all kinds of hotbeds of foosball, and different tables abounded. But in the 70s, Dynamo was a totally different table than the ones that you guys choose to talk about. And I know why you choose to talk about them. You don't know any different. So I get it. But there was a lot in the 70s that went on. And so earlier in the conversation, you talked about players that hung on from the 70s until the 90s. A lot of people hung on. It's just not just wasn't a lot of tournament soccer people held on.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Dave, I got a question for you, man.
Yes, sir.
What the hell was like? Oh yeah. So you
Mark.
you heard Jim and I go through our top 5. I don't know if you were too busy running the tournament. You're too busy with the stress and the demands of all that stuff. But what would you have? What did you think of our top 5? And what would you have if you could describe some performances that are memorable for you during the 90s, if you had a chance to watch some of these matches?
No, I couldn't tell you. Come Monday afternoon, I couldn't tell you who won or anything like that. My job at that time. So let me step into that job if I could.
Yeah, let's retrace it back to the days you played for a while. Then you started to become a promoter. When did that transformation take place?
Yeah, well, I knew because I was having to go to New Orleans to really play on some good well-maintained tornado tables. And there was one place in Pasadena, Texas, and there was one place in Houston, Texas. Tom Hyatt had a place called the Hustler. And Bruce Kofer had a place called Popeyes. And you just talk about, you mentioned a minute ago, John and Daniel Smith. They came out of Popeyes. All the great Houston players, Frank Covey, Bill Henderson, Ronnie Lewis, Ricky Lewis, Doug Lewis, Robert Janik, Larry Hayden. Gosh, I'm embarrassed now. I'm going to forget hundreds and hundreds of tough players. But at those two tornado dens, see, I came from another land, basically Alvin kind of split, and we could go to Pasadena and we were kind of let in, and we could go to Houston and we were let in because I ran with that group of guys from Florida. But they all knew us and they would tell people not to play us. I told you about the tournament we went to at Ship's Wheel. The next tournament that Otto and I entered was in Pearland, Texas. And when we got there, good friend of mine, became a very good friend of mine, beautiful young lady, Sherry Rice, pointed those at the man at the door and said, they can't come in here. This is our tournament. They're not allowed. If
Really?
you let them play, I'm taking all this business with me.
Whoa.
So 1970s, you're playing Tornado, you're playing a little Dynamo. And just to kind of give the listeners some perspective, were you aware that there was a tournament soccer tour as well taking place? Was this something, I know sometimes the players from Tornado and Dynamo in the 70s would go to these events, etc. But how aware of it were you? Or were you really so focused on what was super competitive foosball in Houston and in Pasadena in particular in the state of Texas? Or were you kind of aware that there was this so-called $1 million tour also going on?
We were aware of it. And, but TS never really came into Dallas, never came into Texas.
Really?
No. There was, to the best of my knowledge, and I've thought about this a lot today, I think there were only 2 tournament soccer tables in the whole of Houston, and that was at the Student Union building. It just, and I don't want to sound prejudiced, and I'm truly not in saying this, It's where that Texas style table was the predominant table. The tournament soccer table could just never come in.
Got it. Yeah.
Now, Dave, one thing that stood out from the early part of this conversation is I'm really glad you walked into a topless bar, because playing foosball on a table that has a top on it is really, really difficult. So you may never have become a foosball man if that was the case.
Yeah,
Dave, go ahead.
No. It was a handle that originally, and later on, I was interviewing or discussing with Bob Furr, and he explained to me why he designed the handle as he did, and that's what I remember walking into that bar was someone was using a foosball handle in a very peculiar way, and so I'd not really thought anything about that. I'd not thought anything about that for years and years until Bob Furr, the guy that designed the tornado table, told me one of the reasons the handle was made that way. So, but go ahead, Jim, with your question.
Thanks for that, Dave. Appreciate that. You know, you said you weren't the president of Tornado, but you know, you and I first met about 1993 or so when you guys brought me out on tour and all that, and Inside Foos first started covering the Tornado tour. You weren't the president, but going to the factory, and I was able to visit there a few times, or working events with you, as I did many, many times. 3 days before and a day or two after, and of course all weekend long. There was no question who was the captain of the ship. I mean, that was your show, Dave, and we know it. I mean, it was your show at the factory. It was your show at the tournaments. And you're being humble about it, but there's no question that you were the leader of that movement of what really eventually has been called the second golden era of foosball. But you also said that you were more of a hands-on guy. You're a guy that likes to get down there in there and do and put on legs on tables and put rods in and lube those things and whatever it took. And that was also you. You were also that guy that was out there, even lifting. I saw you, how many tables have I seen you lift? Probably more than I've seen anyone lift, and move. So talk a little bit, because I got to experience it. Talk a little bit about, these events, 5 of them a year, and the world's bigger than any of them. How much work it was to organize these things and then to actually logistically get them going, get everything set up, get them ready before the players got there. I mean, they were big jobs. This was a big job.
Okay, well, and thanks for that. I was very lucky. Thanks for those kind words, Jim. I was very lucky. I had some good people working around me. But one of the things when I moved back from Maine, I'd sold my route, went to Wyoming, moved up to Maine, and started a family, and that didn't work out so well. The family did. The marriage didn't last. So I came back to Texas, and Ed wanted me to go to work for him, and I wanted to run tournaments, and he wanted me to sell and build foosball tables. And so Ed told me, he said, well, God damn it, Dave, if you're going to run a tour, it's got to pay for itself. And gentlemen, that's hard to do.
Yeah.
So I went to work on doing things that would help me do that. One of the first things I did was go over to the national sales office in Hilton, and I pitched what I could do to a young lady named Annette O'Day, and she became my national sales contact. And I would, I had to prove myself everywhere I go to everyone I worked with, and these hotels. I mean, the big tournament we had over here at the Sheraton, they begged for us to come back. Now, the other side of their mouth, they were telling all the other hotels what a sorry group we was, and they should never sign us to a contract.
Really?
Business. Maybe y'all have heard something about it. It's cutthroat.
Mm-hmm.
So I got with Annette and told her what we could do, where we could do it at. But you're right, Jim, that pre-con meeting that usually started at 9:00 on Wednesday morning with the hotel staff, the housekeeping group, the food and beverage group, every facet of the hotel business, they had to have extra people at the front desk. Well, I told them when they needed those folks there, because I wanted them, and my goal, that I will tell it at every tournament, my goal is for that player to walk through these doors Thursday afternoon with a smile on his face and a pocket full of money. And if we do our job right, when he leaves Monday morning, he'll have a bigger smile and not a dime to his name. and so I I would go in, I would do these pre-cons. So some things doesn't change. I was doing a site survey a couple of weeks ago, Super Bowl weekend out in Las Vegas for another group that I work with. And a fellow walked in and said, I remember that voice. That's Dave Courington, Tornado Foosball. Are you going to have a tournament here? And I looked at the gentleman, didn't recognize him. I said, no. I'm not doing foosball anymore. No. And so this guy, and I'm ashamed to say I didn't really remember. I did remember him, but he looked so different. But he was from the Atlanta Airport Hilton. He said, I remember the first pre-con meeting I sit in, and I nudged the guy next to me and told him how full of shit I thought you was. And by the middle of the weekend, every word you said had rang true. And that was the most fun, the best group that we had ever had at that hotel. And I hated when I got transferred to a property in Washington, D.C., to lose contact with you. And I walk in here in Vegas and there you are. So Jim, that goes back. There was lots of things, arranging better contracts with freight companies to get the equipment to and from the tournament. Y'all are very tied in with the 518 printing company. I work very closely with a gentleman in Bridgeton, Maine that, Jim, you remember, and Mark, I'm sure you do too. Some of those early, the paraphernalia sales, that was all things that I had to do that I say I'm not an I guy, that the team did. It was all stuff that had to be done to make that tour successful. And procuring a hotel room was the first thing I went after, because you couldn't put on a show if you didn't have a place.
Right.
Dave, I got to ask, man, I didn't know that you weren't doing foosball anymore. I didn't know you were doing, of course, I don't have any visibility to what you're doing. It's kind of stunning to me. Also, because you were doing it for so long, I always thought you were going to retire a foosball guy. Can you talk a little bit about why, or how you're not participating in foosball anymore? Is there kind of a story behind no longer doing foosball?
Yes, Mark, I can.
Okay.
I'm currently in the same industry. I'm a jukebox salesman. So I'm in the same industry, but through the years at Tornado, Jim alluded to it, I was hands-on in the factory. I was hands-on in the promotion. I had a lot of great people. And man, if I just sit here and think about all the people that I worked with constantly, Charles McIntosh, Link Penley, Lou Salkin, Mike and Kathy Warman, just so many that made that USTSA work. So I'd been doing that, but when Valley acquired Tornado, Chuck Millam, the guy that was president of Valley at that time, told me, he was very upfront. He said, I'm not buying this company, I'm buying you. We have to get the company for you to come along with it. Now, they don't, so my head's not big, and don't get that wrong. Foosball fit what Valley did. They were already into electronic darts. They were and still are the world leader in coin-operated pool tables. So foosball and any promotable table game really fit their mold. But they wanted my skills out of the production area, out of the tournament running area, and they wanted me selling. They wanted me out selling. They knew I had a great relationship with a lot of distributors and coin operators around the country, and they wanted me to sell. So a few years after that, Valley and Dynamo merged. Very scary time in my life, because Bill Rickett, who was the owner of Dynamo, I'd known Bill ever since I'd been in the industry. He was a Texas table manufacturer. He had a couple of players steal a Tornado foosball table out of a leather ball saloon so he could copy it exact. And that's how they got in the foosball business. And that was pretty common in that point in time. But I was really, I had no idea if because Bill had tried to get me to come to work for him before, and I would always choose not to. And I was pretty straight up honest with him why I didn't want to come to work for him. So I didn't know how I was going to be received there, but he patted me on my back. He said, "Hey, you're mine now. Anything I can do to support you, I will." And he did. So then I made him a millionaire again when he sold to the Brunswick Corporation. And Brunswick pushed me down even further down the line, you know, away from promotion. So I told someone, Mark, and I'm answering your question. So I told someone a few years back out at a big pool tournament that I'm still involved with. They were standing there talking to me that time, the COO and the VP of international sales at Valley didn't have a clue who I was. Standing out there talking at the tournament, about different things that they could do at the pool table and at the pool tournament to enhance their business. And so I said something about, and finally the international guy said, "Well, who are you?" I said, "Well, I'm Dave Courington. I've worked for Tornado for a long time." He said, "Oh my God, you're Fat Dave." "You're Fat Dave? I didn't know." Yeah, I'm Fat Dave. He said,
Fat Dave.
he said, you can't walk out in the plant and change anything because everyone says, "No, Fat Dave said it has to be done this way." But so they asked Mark, like you did, about my separation, and it was just time for me to leave. I really wanted to promote. I wanted that to be more of a focus. I wasn't, you know, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And I was working really, really hard and not enjoying it. And I explained it to them. I said, and you know, so the guy asked me, why was I still involved? Why was I still doing it? And it's why I'm doing this tonight. This is, to me, almost like a divorce. And Tornado was one of my children. And I just hated that step parent raising my kids without any influence. And that's really why I stepped away. And I was about to do it right after the Hamburg. In fact, Hamburg tournament. In fact, I shared this with Jim Stevens. When I left that fish market that night, I thought that was the last, and I never said a word about it to anyone. But I felt that might have been the last match I'd ever got to see. And but I thought about it on the flight coming back over, and I had always pushed real hard to get Tornado introduced to the European market. And I just decided to call the company that was courting me so hard and tell them, no, I'm going to hang on. And I did hold on for a few more years. But that's it, Mark. I just left. We just kind of divorced. I'll say it that way.
Amicable parting of the ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Dave, you mentioned international stuff, and in the beginning of the international foosball scene started kind of on your watch. Early 2000s, ITSF is formed. Maybe there was some. You were a bit of a skeptic at first, maybe, but you began to embrace it. I know you did. In fact, if you watch, folks, if you watch a few of the World Cups, and you look at and you're watching Team USA play down there in the finals area, there's one voice that you definitely hear cheering them on constantly from the stands. A very, very familiar voice, a very loud voice, and a very enthusiastic voice. But talk a little bit, Dave, about that transition, how Valley and Tornado in particular began to look kind of overseas, not only as for sales, but a way to perhaps market the table, but also a way to kind of open it up competitively internationally. that first World Cup that you talked about in 06, which was amazing. And that's David sitting front and center there on the greatest match in the history of foosball that night, USA versus France. I know, Dave, you will never forget it. I'll never forget it either. But talk a little bit about how you began to really buy in to international table soccer and embrace it, not only from a competitive point of view, but a sales point of view as well.
Well, it really wasn't that I didn't embrace or buy into it, the ITSF, I mean. I always liked that idea. I never felt, and I do not feel now, that a manufacturer of the table should have anything to do with the promotion of the sport. It's just wrong. It's just back-asswards. And I had to do it for necessity to keep the game going. But when I sit down and talk with Fareed at a trade show in London and told him, I said, here's some things that I feel should happen. And one set of rules, a few things I was concerned about. I felt he had the same passion I did. So, but the big thing was just the cost of our table. You know, when you sell stuff overseas, duties can be doubled and tripled. And so for me to land a table in the European market, they were paying $1,100 in the late 80s. And so that's really what I had to overcome, because I knew I had enough confidence in my product. If I ever showed it to that market, it would take over that market. And where it has not taken over that market from a sales perspective, it certainly has from a competition standpoint. And I'm very proud of that.
So that brings up an interesting point, because when you think about, you mentioned 43 different manufacturers back in the early days of foosball. What exactly was the early philosophy of Tornado as a manufacturer? How did they look at the other competition, and how did they actually come up with a formula that is now known as the world standard?
Well, that's what they decided they needed to do, was build a standard. It was everyone copying everyone. So what Bob Hayes and Bob Furr did was very unique. They looked at a table in this tavern they would gather at, and there's always people playing it, but it was always broke down. And so Bob Hayes said, if we could ever get a table that wouldn't break down, Bob Furr, the engineer, said, I could design a table that wouldn't break down.
Okay.
Well, and so what would you do? So they came up with it, and they made a Tornado, and they did not sell the Tornado table. They leased it to people.
Really?
And so the Tornado table, as we know it today, was built as a piece of lease equipment. The premise was they could lease it to Clay, and he could operate in his area for 6, 8, 10 months. When he got tired and gave up the ghost, send the tables back. They wanted a table that was built sturdy enough they could literally clean it up and send it to the next guy. And so a lot of things that's done at the manufacturing standpoint, to be honest with you, doesn't make sense from a production standpoint. But that was what we had to do to make the standard of the industry. And all those 43 other guys just got dropping like flies.
Yeah. It's curious that, especially from the European perspective, that the Texas-style Tornado table has become, the thing that if you're going to build a better table, it has to be better than that.
Well, here's something that I learned early on as a player. I'm talking about as a player, because in the Houston market, the Challenger was that table was out a lot. The glass top dynamos was out a lot. And there was only two places you could play Tornado. So the one thing as a beginner player that really drew me to that Tornado table is table number 8 at the Hustler played exactly the same as table number 16 did at Popeye's Game Room. The Tornado tables provided a player a consistent excuse the pun, a level playing field. And no matter what style, and I've said this from day one, no matter what your style of play is, you can adapt that style to the tornado table.
Okay.
And so over in Europe, people's style of play had to be built around the table they played on.
Right.
You know, the pin shot, the bump shot. Well, you had to always have your man on top of the ball because you couldn't level the friggin' table. The balls were like egg yolks. If you didn't keep that man on the ball, it would roll away from you.
Mm-hmm.
So that style was based on, that's the way you had to play on that table. So that's the thing, in my opinion, that's really elevated tornado is no matter what your style, can you play a pin shot style as good on the table as you can, front pin as you can on your home table? Maybe not, but it's not completely foreign to you. You can play it, and you can stop the ball and catch it and control it. And on many of the that's why they play the style of game they do in Italy, which is so very, very popular over there.
Right.
They never let the ball stop because it wouldn't never stop anyway. So you might as well hit the hell out of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. As hard as you can. That seems to be their style.
Yeah. So that, and I'm just an old pig farmer from Alabama. I could be wrong, but that's always kind of been my opinion.
Now, when you were playing, what was your favorite shot? What were you known as?
A pull shot. I was a goalie, and then back then players played as teams. You heard me mention Otto. Otto and I played together. Everyone played together. You had goalies, you had forwards, and you knew when you were going to the tournament in St. Louis or the tournament in Oklahoma City who the teams you were.
Okay.
You were going to have to face, and you knew how they played, and there were teams. Mid 80s, and I hated it. From a promoter's side, I hated it from a player's side because I was a goalie. And I hated it all around.
Huh.
All the forwards got together and said, "Hey, let's dump our goalies and let's play together."
Really? What did they do that?
Keeping the money amongst themselves.
Oh, that's not kosher. What is the deal?
It's exactly what happened.
Huh.
And so all the predominant goalie players went away.
Huh. I had no idea this is the thing.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Y'all don't know this because you haven't been through it. I've been through it. So all of those so you asked about my shot. Shooting's easy. Mark said it a moment ago. From on the tornado table, from the goal, there's a gaping holes everywhere if you can hit it. Well, I was lucky enough. I worked hard enough. I put in those 10,000 hours, and I could hit that gaping hole. Right. Anyone could. So what I hit was that little man. And on the original Tornado Man, on the back of that foot, there was a cleft right at the very bottom. And I could have my partner put his man against the wall in the front, tilt the man up in catching position. And I shot from the wall, and I could do a dead stick pass to the wall, to the middle man, and also to the long, to the dead man.
Wow.
I could go dead. And so as a goalie, as a team, when you start picking that guy apart with a pass, now all of a sudden, oh shit, we got to block this pass, got to cover this, got to cover this. And then the fourth or I can't tell you how many fourth or fifth points I've scored because the opposing forward was concentrating so much on my ability to pass the ball to my forward.
Interesting. Yeah.
When they started covering the pass, the holes were so wide even I couldn't miss them.
Wow.
Dave, I gotta address something that's been a curiosity to me forever. So in the 90s, right, I'm a kid. I'm like, whatever, 17, 18, 19. There's all these conspiracy theories. they changed the surface, so we have to buy all new tables. They changed the ball. They just want us to buy new balls. They changed the rod, so you can't do this, do that. And as I got older and got into other industry, I realized that sometimes a vendor changes something, the tolerance changes a little bit, like a micrometer or something. It throws everything off, and you're stuck with what you're stuck with. What is the reality behind changing the surface, changing the balls, especially like mid-year? Was it a profiteering scheme, or was it just really you guys thought there was some advantageous manufacturing thought there was some advantageous or cost-cutting maneuver? Talk to me about that.
Just dumbasses out there talking about stuff they don't know anything about.
That's what I'm asking, man.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but you did hit on it. And you know, well, you don't know this, but Tornado kept the same laminate, the same color man, all that forever and ever and ever. And the reason we did that was to help the operator. So you could not where you had to buy a different table. That's where tournament soccer screwed the pooch. Every 2 years you had to buy a new table.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't work. But I'll speak specifically about the surface. That is a custom playfield that you can't get anywhere.
Right.
That's a screened piece of green paper. And Wilson Art at that time was the only company that made that matte surface. They made it right down here in Temple, Texas. And it was a foil drum that texture was made on. Well, somewhere maybe in July, the foil drum went out of service, and they just, without telling us, went to the matte surface. I couldn't tell the difference. They couldn't tell the difference. But by God, when Dieter Phil grabbed me by the arm and drugged me, and
telling you,
Phil,
remember
Phil, and I felt of it and went to this table, and how I felt of it. I took the ball and I drug it across. I took the ball over here and drug it across. And I could feel the difference. Caught me by total shock. So as soon as the tournament was over, I went to the people and Jim, I think, has saw me and upset a time or two.
No,
and
never.
Those people, I promise you, at Wilson Art never wanted to see me upset again.
Nor do I, Dave. Nor do I.
It's so funny you bring up Dieter, because I brought him up in the Reese Roberts. I remember that. I remember how Dieter had worked his ass off and practiced forever to win our tournament. And he comes in, the surface is different. He's like, "Why are you guys doing this to me?" It's unfortunate. He was victimized by that, but it wasn't intentional. But
absolutely not. And so you talk about the balls.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wish it was a scientific method of the way they make those balls, but have any of y'all ever been to an injection molding facility? You know anything about injection molding?
Nope.
On the medical device side, I know they manage it as hard as they can because these are medical devices, and still they can't get it right. But so I'm anxious to hear your story. Go ahead.
So that Texan urethane that we've used to make that ball, and believe me, when the current ball, if we had another chapter, I could tell you about how we almost killed ourselves getting that ball ready for the tour kickoff. But plastic is always clear.
Mm-hmm.
Always clear. And you have to add a color to it. Well, at the injection molding place, they will put I'll say a bag of urethane pellets, maybe 55 pounds. They'll dump it in the molder. And then they've got the coloring agent over here, the color chips. And at the place that made our balls, they used a yellow Rudy's barbecue drink cup, you know, like a large, and he would scoop down in that bucket and dump it in there. And so that consistency,
depending on how many beers he had,
it just there was no precise thing.
I get it.
And it's the same way with the men. If you put too much yellow dye in those yellow men, they snap like twigs.
Interesting.
The color really changes it. So none of that was done intentionally. I didn't want anybody to buy new balls. That's the reason we went to the ball we did, that we spent so much money at Tornado to get that centerless grinder that grinds 5 balls at a time to be perfectly round. And Ed McLeod and Tornado wasn't a very wealthy company, and he paid $245,000 for that. So because it's a game of foosball, right? Without you got the ball's important. So,
I'm telling you right now, man. I'm in the medical device industry. I see how production is. They were talking about implants, things that go in people's body, and it goes wrong all the time because something changes a tolerance by a very small amount. And so foosballs and men does not surprise me at all. But let me switch gears for a second. Why were you so hard on Johnny Horton? What did he do to you, Dave? I mean, seriously, why the 7th and 8th and 9th suspension? Really?
Wow.
I'm responsible, Mark. I can assure you of this. If it wasn't for Dave Courington, Johnny Horton would not be alive right now.
I know, man. The sarcasm, my friend.
Yeah, no, I understand, but I always enjoyed Johnny, and I really appreciated his play on the table. And by the way, in when I won the '86 Texas State Championship, he was one of the guys that I had to beat.
Really?
Beat him in the '83 Nationals Tornado. Was that '83? No, that was in '85 in North Carolina. But again, I had to run a business, and when hotels tell you can't come back, for instance, y'all remember the beautiful hotel that Jim Stevens talked about with the glass window, the first place we had him set up as a pit? They told us they didn't want our business back after we let Johnny come back, and so that's why we moved to the Hyatt.
Yeah. The hotels at that time, always beautiful Hiltons or Hyatts as well. One thing too, folks, Dave Courington, he says he's a goalie, but I can remember even well into the 2000s that you could walk up to a table. Dave Courington would say, "Would you like to see me hit a dead man pole shot?" And you would set that man against the wall, and Dave would step up there and hit a good old-fashioned Texas dead man pole shot. You know that's true, Dave, because you did it many times. That was probably part of your show when you go to Las Vegas and show off these tables as well, right?
Well, yeah, you had to be able to play a little bit, but
So Dave, what was your first year really at the helm or as a vice president or someone who was really a mover and shaker with Tornado? What was the first year?
83.
83. So 19.
Well, back.
Yeah,
I was running promotions for them at that time.
Okay. So we have the tournament soccer tour. It crashes in 1981. Dynamo with Kathy Brainerd kind of picks it up for a few years. Then 1986 in Dallas. I was at the 1985 World Championships as a player, by the way, downtown Dallas, beautiful hotel, really great event. 1986 and then 1987 World Championships are both Dynamo and then Tornado. How did that come about? How did a World Championship event, how did it become both Dynamo and Tornado? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the first time
transition. It's a transition, isn't it, from Dynamo and eventually Tornado?
The first time it was supposed to be the first tournament that was a dual tournament was supposed to be 3 tournaments. Mike Dickinson, I believe, from up in the Northwest was supposed to bring his tournament soccer clone, and I'm not sure why exactly it didn't show up, but it didn't show up. But to be real honest with you, Jim, is the folks at Dynamo, they wasn't going to lose that much money. They said, well, we're not going to send over that many tables, because a table sent to a tournament like that, that's you've got $325 to $300 and maybe $400 into that table in tournament expense. And believe me, that's hard That's a very bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah.
You have to sell it off as a discount, so you have to discount the price. You've got the expense of moving it to the location. You've got the expense of moving it out of that location, and you've got the repair cost that comes along with 4 or 5 days of tournament play when players thinks it's funny to flip a table up and shoot shots and see, who can make the biggest helicopter looking rod. Where that's fun in games to a lot of people, it's a pretty expensive game to someone that's building tables.
Right.
So that's how it happened. That's how it happened, Jim. Economics.
Yeah. So 85, 86, 86, 87, you guys see the multiple. And then that's kind of the beginning. I think when we look back on it now, the beginning of the second golden era really started right about then, 87, 88. And then, of course, you gained momentum in the late 80s, heading into the 90s, where we started to see these huge turnouts at the Tornado Worlds, et cetera. But in those early days, what was it? Because things grew, in Southern California, we got tornado tables. The player base grew. We started developing these really good young players. Northern California, the same. All over the country, suddenly there's a resurgence. People are coming out of the woodwork who used to play. New players are coming in who want to play. And this is where we see the Tornado Tour begin to really flourish. Dynamo gets left behind. Dynamo no longer really in the mix. Johnny Lott's doing his striker out in California. But your Tornado Tour, and I'm going to say yours, really started to take root and blossom and explode in those late 80s, right on through the 1990s, into the 1990s. What were some of the factors that really allowed that to happen?
It's pretty simple. We were promoting foosball. So I mentioned the USTSA group, Charles and Kathy and Lou and all those folks. You said California. Phil Schlafer was the first guy to bring Tornado tables out there. But we had a dealer program. Tornado sold all of its tables through coin-op distributors.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a meeting and we talked about it amongst this group. And we said, well, we need to have a promoter category. And so we came up with a package. If you would buy 10 tables, and you had to pay cash for them, but if you bought 10 tables, we would ship those tables to you at no cost. In addition, we would give you $2,500 worth of entry fees so you could run a tournament, qualify people to come to the local tour events, and none of those were to the World Championship. So that's why I'll go back to my conversation about the Hilton. It was very important to me that I moved the tournament around to different areas so I could sell Terry Blanco, so I could sell JC, Jim Cole, so I could sell Danny Munn. What was Leonard's Parks brother's name, Jim?
Well, Leonard and Trevor, yeah.
Leonard, not Trevor. So Leonard. That's why I had a tournament in San Bernardino, California, so I could sell all those people tables. That's why I had a tournament in up in the San Jose area, so I could sell those people tournaments. And I knew once those players who had been playing on some other table, once they came to a Tornado table, they were going to stay. Excuse me. And I also knew new players would have the same experience I had when I was a new player. Hey, this table's it plays pretty good. It plays the same as this one and that one and the one over there. And so that's up in New York, Greg Mendel in Albany, Billy Banks. And I can't think of the guy's name down in I had 3 dealers in New York, Steve Rogie up in the Boston area, Dana Kitchens in Virginia. It just, in Atlanta, we had 3 dealers. So we had several down in Florida. We had Rodney Jenkins in Alabama. We had all those scoundrels down in Louisiana. Link Penley, Mike and Kathy Warman. All those folks came out of that dealer program.
So, Dave, would you like to take a call? Because we have a caller who would like to ask you a question. Mike, welcome to FoosTalk Live. You're on with Dave Courington. What would you like to say?
Dave Courington, Mike Green. How you doing, buddy?
Mike, I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I just wanted to say something about Dave because I know you don't like to take a lot of credit. And I probably played about Tornado about 4 years before I ever met Dave. And to be honest with you, I would have never stepped foot in a Tornado room if it hadn't been for Dave, because Dave knows there was a lot going on back then pre-Dave. So anyway, he came to the Dynamo terms. He introduced himself, and man, we hit it off pretty good. And he basically looked at him. He goes, "There won't be none more of that," as Dave says, BS. So we're just all going to get together and play foosball. And I didn't have much success on the table, unfortunately. Dynamo, as Dave talks about, was the worst table ever built, but he's right. But I had success on it. Tornado was the best table built. Didn't have so much, but anyway, I just wanted to make the real quick statement about when you guys asked why Tornado did what it did, and the guy's on the phone with you, because there's a whole bunch of guys just like me would have never, ever stepped foot into a Tornado foosball tournament. Had been for him.
Interesting. Very interesting. Wow. What say you, Dave?
Well, Mike's too kind. But there was a great group of players in that Florida area, and Casey Pruitt and Bobby Diaz was a Tornado dealer down there. Prior to, on the original Tornado dealer program, you had a guy up in Fort Walton that brought some of the original glass top Tornadoes up there. But yeah, Mike, I knew as a player. See, I wanted that big tournament soccer deal, that spectacle, but I missed it. I knew I'd missed it as a player. I knew I'd missed it. And I knew if it was to keep on, that's the only way it could go on, is if someone ran events on a consistent basis. And my job wasn't to stand on the stage. My job was to build the stage that others could elevate up to.
Right. Wow.
All right, guys, I'll let you go, but I just wanted to say that, and great show.
Mike, thank you so much. It's great to hear from you. Mike Green, calling in for FoosTalk Live. Yeah, we greatly appreciate you joining us, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Dave, I had a chance to kind of meet you, really officially meet you when you decided to bring Inside Foos out on tour in '93. I think we had talked once or twice, maybe at a tournament out in California, and I probably met you way back in the early '80s of Milo Butterfingers there in Dallas when we traveled out there to play at like a $5,000 event. But you saw what we were doing out in California. I know you mentioned Jim Cole, the California promoter out there, kind of showed you that there was some video foos taking place. Steve Murray, of course, who worked with you, also was instrumental in kind of identifying what was going on with Inside Foos and with what I was doing. Talk a little bit about your first impressions. I'm not sure I want to hear it, but talk about the early days of Inside Foos and Tornado working together.
Okay, I'm glad to talk about it, and it won't be anything that I certainly hope. I'm not going to say anything that'll hurt your feelings. If it does, you get over it. But foosball is a real hard game to describe to people. I travel a lot, and I'd sit down on a plane, and I'd get a chatty Cathy sitting next to me, and what do you do? And
I been there.
And so my pat answer came down to be, I'm in the entertainment field.
Oh, there you go.
and that would be so broad, it would confuse them so much. Then I could get a little rest, because typically airplanes is one of the few places I got any rest at all. But I knew what Jim did. I knew, because foosball was very hard to explain. Having someone looking at it and say, "Oh, that ball pass, that brush, that lane, that middle, that straight." But there was something to that, and because he understood foosball, because he was a player, and he wanted to be Vin Scully. That was I saw that, but really, after the first tournament, I went to where my brain always goes, and that's teaching. If I'd had the opportunity to go to college, I would have been a teacher. And so I knew that what Jim did was going to be a great teaching tool.
Yes.
So all the players on the tour, all the Southern California players, could see the folks back east, and it made for a lot more fierce competition when they got together.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what I liked, and I like the show and the spectacle of it. Jim, you'll recall the early days down at the Hyatt Rent-A-Center. We would rent 2 Rent-A-Centers completely out of big screen TVs.
That's right.
And that's when the 60-inch TV, it took 5 men to lift. And so I wanted the tournaments to be really nice. I wanted people to come and enjoy it. I always wanted folks to have that great experience. But my workman-like mentality, now being no matter what I do, it's still in my job today. I was there to do my job. And my job was to build that tournament, get it over with on time, pay everyone out their money, pack it back up, and then go to the next place.
Mm.
But one of the problems with my personality, if I'm going to work, everybody's got to work. And so it really ticked me off that players did not take that same workman attitude, because they were interfering with my ability to do my job well. When a player doesn't go to the table when his match is called.
Right.
How disrespectful is that? You're disrespecting everyone's time.
Mm-hmm.
It's terrible. It's terrible. And that stuff would really get under my skin. And since I'd been there since Wednesday, and since it's now early Monday morning, go to your table and play your match. Isn't that what you came here to do?
Simple.
Why are you not here? Go play. Why are you guys not playing? Please go play. Because in a multi-event like that, I could have 2 players that's holding up 15 different divisions, and I hated having having all these different divisions. I always hated it. I hated it. I knew better, but that's what I had to do. I had to make that tournament liquidate and make money.
Dave, for those of listeners that don't know what we're talking about, imagine dozens and dozens of brackets where you hand wrote everything and you threw away pieces of paper and you had recall forms. And if people wanted to take a smoke break together, they could, and they could just end their match and take an extra 30 minutes before they wrote their match card out, when it was all handwritten. And there would be mistakes made all the time. Like someone would play the wrong match because it wasn't electronic. 2 people play the wrong match, or they got called up prematurely, or there was a mistake made. It would screw up the whole bracket. They'd have to do all kinds of nonsense. Charts and charts across bulletin boards was the way that it was run back.
Can't imagine.
Yeah, and if those guys did go out and take a smoke break for a half an hour, that basically gets added on to the back end of the tournament, and that's why sometimes it runs so late. It shouldn't. Yeah,
but wait, there's more. now that they've had their smoke, now that they've decided, screw it, let's take another 45 minutes. We want an official.
Yeah. And then they only want a certain official.
I see.
And wait. Oh, and so now that official's tying up other matches.
Right.
And then there's this other element came in. Oh no, screw you. If Jim can't call our match, we're not playing.
Oh.
And sometimes,
sorry about that, buddy.
Yeah, and sometimes Jim would be hard to find too, because how would he know when that match was coming up? in fairness to Jim. But that always pissed me off. That wasn't right. That was and is so disrespectful. And Mark, you talked about all those charts and the mistakes. My tournament staff, yeah, we would make mistakes. But you know where the biggest mistakes were made? When a young player like yourself that was just extremely excited, you come running up to the and you signed your match card and you slid it in and you went off to tell all your friends and you circled the wrong name.
Yeah.
And we entered it in the chart.
Oh yes.
And you played 5 matches after that. Wait a minute, I'm not in the losers bracket.
It's hilarious. It's so hilarious.
It happened a lot, no doubt about it.
So let me tell you some other stuff, and this is gonna and he's dead, and I'm not talking bad about him. Casey Delano.
Yeah.
Casey.
Yep.
In the 87, I believe it was Sheraton tournament, he signed up under 4 different names for the World Championship singles.
How's that even possible?
Yeah.
They didn't notice until he had to play against himself.
That's exactly it. Mike Warman said, hey, that guy you just called me up, that guy that I just had to play in the loser bracket. Yeah. You just called him up against himself.
Oh, man.
Huh?
Oh,
so
man.
he signed up as Casey, Casey Delano.
Wow.
He signed up as Delano Casey. He signed up as KC Delano.
Man.
Way to work the system.
Yeah,
Smart.
Working the system. You get the feeling, guys. We could literally sit here, and unfortunately, we're not sitting around a table having a few beers and doing this because we could go on for 6 or 8 hours. Because you get the sense that we have barely touched the surface of Dave Courington's knowledge, both from a manufacturer, as a promotion and a promotional and a player's point of view. Dave, there's not a year that goes by that I don't get a text from Dave Courington wishing me the best. How's my family? Dave, you've always been a great friend to me. I still have just an incredible warm spot in my heart for you as a person. And of course, the wars we've been through over the years, going back now almost 30 years, with my involvement with Tornado. And we're going to have to do this again because there is a lot more that we could talk about. Unfortunately, we're up against it. But I for one, just want to tell you how much I appreciate you, how much your friendship has always meant to me and your support, et cetera. It's not always been the easiest on both ends, for sure. But thank you for joining us here tonight. And I know Mark and Tom probably have another question or two for you. But I just wanted to get that in, make sure you know how much I appreciate you, buddy.
I just want to say,
thank you, Jim.
I want to just really reiterate Jim's sentiments. And I know that you had tremendous people behind you, like Link and Steve Murray, those guys supporting you from, you couldn't get these things done, these types of things done without guys like Steve Murray on your team. So I just want to thank you for all the hard work. And I know you have a team behind you that helped you to this success as you achieved the 90s is a great memory for me. So thank you for that.
Yeah. So Dave, I have to reiterate that I want to thank you as well for your tremendous contributions to the sport. Tremendous. I mean, clearly there's a great respect for your past and what you've done. And I think Jim is correct. We need to bring you back. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Or maybe 3 or 4 more episodes if we're really going to dive in deep here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to just get into just the topic of promotions and what to do about today's situation, but that is for another show. Absolutely. But Dave, we wish you the best, and of course, we want you to stay safe and healthy. You've got a gold card here at FoosTalk Live. Anytime you'd like to come back, say the word.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thanks for doing this. It's tragic that you've had to scoop to the bottom of the barrel because there's no tournaments to talk about. And believe me, I would much rather you be talking about tournaments. But
sure,
the one thing as a player, there's so much in what you do that to me is just totally overlooked. And don't take this wrong. And if you do, get over it. the 70s, it's just like don't exist. And I
Right.
understand why it don't exist. Y'all wasn't there. You don't get it. And you really have to know how that went down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm a history buff. If you don't know what happened before, how can you prepare for the future?
Yeah.
So I thank you so much. I love to talk to you anytime.
Great.
Clay, help you. Thank you for helping me get
Yeah.
the technical end of this. And my best to all. And maybe the next time we talk, Mark, I can answer that goofy question you keep asking about the distraction rule.
Yeah, get rid of. Get rid of that stupid rule.
Yeah, right. We'll get into that for sure.
And
We're going to dive deep into the tornado and dynamo tours of the 70s next time. Thanks, Dave.
All right, Dave. Thank you so much once again. Be safe, be healthy, and thank you for joining us on Foos Talk Live.
stay positive and test negative. Thank you.
Yes,
There you
sir.
go.
All right. Well, guys, we are out of time, and I think we ought to petition Podbean to get us an extra 2 hours here. But in the meantime, thank you so much for our listeners this evening, Mark, Jim, and Clay. It's always a pleasure. Let's get back together again next week and do this all over again in Foos Talk Live. Foos Talk Live is a product of Foosball Radio and Inside Foos TV. All rights reserved. Our sincere thanks to 518 Prince, Foosball Clubs USA, Foosballers the Movie, and the United States Table Soccer Organization. Join us next Sunday for another episode of Foos Talk Live. In the meantime,
we'll see you foozin'.